On this lecture, we're going to deal with two things. We'll talk about the superiority of the Son to Moses in chapter 3, verses 1 through 6, which will then move into the second warning, the parenthetical warning on the danger of disobedience from chapter 3, verse 7 through chapter 4, verse 13. So dealing with the first point, the superiority of the Son to Moses in chapter 3, verses 1 through 6, the author now goes on to the second pillar of Judaism, Moses. And the background to this section is the book of Numbers, chapter 12, verses 5 through 8. The brother and sister of Moses challenged his authority, and God intervened, and God pointed out the faithfulness of Moses and his uniqueness as a prophet with whom God spoke face to face. And so the superiority of the Son to Moses is shown in two ways. First of all, in his person and work in chapter 3, verses 1 through 4. In verse 1, the point of the comparison is the faithfulness of Moses. Moses was faithful, but defection took place in his time under faithful Moses. And now there's one greater than Moses here. Will there yet be another defection? There are two terms that clearly show the author is writing to true believers. He calls them holy brethren and calls them partakers of a heavenly calling. He's not writing to people who came close to believing, but to those who are true believers. The term heavenly calling refers to the effectual calling to salvation, and they are partakers of that calling. The word partaker means that they are part of it. In chapter 3, verse 14, they are partakers of the Messiah. In chapter 6, verse 4, partakers of the Holy Spirit. In chapter 12, verse 8, they are partakers of divine discipline. They are partakers because they are real believers. Because they are real believers, the writer calls upon them to consider the apostle and high priest of our confession. The Greek word for consider means to make a careful study or investigation of it. They had already made their confession, but after they had confessed that Yeshua was the Messiah, the next step, Yeshua says in Matthew 11:29, was to learn of me. They need to gaze upon him. The Messiah is not the Levitical system that was trying to pull them back. They need to gaze on him and not on that system. Here the author gives the Messiah two titles, apostle and high priest. This is the only place where these two titles are used of Yeshua, of the Messiah. First, he is an apostle. In this case, he is like Moses. An apostle, like a prophet, represents God to man. In this case, the writer is not using the term apostle in the same sense as the 12 apostles, but using the word apostle in the sense of a messenger through whom a new dispensation came into being and by whom a covenant was made. As John 1:17 points out, this was true of both Moses and the Messiah. Through Moses, the Mosaic covenant was made and the dispensation of law was brought in. Through the Messiah, the new covenant was made and the dispensation of grace was brought in. The very word apostle means one who has been sent. God sent Moses in Exodus chapter 3, verses 1 through 6, and the Messiah Yeshua was someone who has also been sent. This comes out in John's Gospel in 3:34, chapter 5, verses 36 to 37, 17:3, and chapter 20, verse 4. Second, he is also the high priest. A high priest represents men to God. In that sense, Yeshua is like Aaron. These two titles are given to the Messiah. Apostle, which makes him like Moses, and high priest, which makes him like Aaron. The apostolic theme will be developed in chapter 3, verse 1 through chapter 4, verse 13, and the high priestly theme will be developed in chapter 4, verse 14 through chapter 7, verse 28.
The full length of this particular video presentation is 48 minutes. This brief sample should help to demonstrate the depth and quality of these teachings and recordings. There are 10 video lectures, over 9 hours of teaching content for this course on the book of Hebrews. To order this or another online course, visit us at www.arielcollege.com.